Issue 8 is a filler story, so I'll review it after issues 9 and 10, because issues 9 and 10 actually continue with the story arc we just saw. Rick and Morty comic issue 9. We see an alternate Summer bringing Rick and Morty to a closed building called Drunken Donuts. I love that name. She bangs on the door and is asked what the password is, and Rick amusingly lampshades to the other Jerry that they don't have time for this, and it was amusing to see Rick poke him in the eyes. Jerry says, "How is that faster than just telling me the password?" I mean, he did say 2 sentences before doing that to him. Rick then actually admits that was a fair point, as I have the biggest smile on my face. Summer says she needs to keep them safe, and they look down at the Resistance, who have a forklift to themselves. For some reason, Ugly Morty says that this world is dying, but doesn't explain how or why, and mocks Rick for not caring about people. Is it dying from pollution? Then why wouldn't he do anything about it? I couldn't tell who was talking at first because there's no indication of that, and I was confused, especially since the person talking isn't talking directly to Rick. Beth tells Ugly Morty that Rick and Morty C-132 have come to the rebels, and she's sad that he insists he has no sister. You know, despite the fact that Ugly Morty's a kid, and thus seems like he should have no business running a country, and he looks ugly, other than that, we've been given basically no reason to believe he's doing a horrible job as a leader who would really justify Summer rebelling against him. It's not like with Robotnik, where we see him pollute and roboticize and capture people for slavery, or at least cause destruction. The only thing this guy's done to his planet is presumably force people to dress all cyberpunk-like, because it'd be unrealistic for everyone to start doing that willingly so fast. He definitely seems intimidating, and no 14-year-old should be a tyrant. He should be in high school like a normal boy. But the point is that you'd think such a dark comic would be doing more to show us why the Resistance is in the right, beyond just Morty shouldn't be running a country because it's not normal. Summer hasn't gone on a rant explaining her reasoning. Even Archie Sonic did that. It's just that she misses the old status quo, and that's comparably weak. Anyways, Ugly Morty wants to activate the sleeper to put an end to the rebellion. Summer shows Rick and Morty the artillery, and plans to show them to their bunks compassionately because they're tired. Morty complains that the rebels are all glaring at him, even though he's clearly a different person from their tyrant, and after Rick makes an amusing but lame joke to lighten the mood, the rebels briefly plan on killing Morty just to be sure. Jerry then annoys them by going between them and saying that he can dig them, planning on killing his son, and they're just annoyed at him trying to speak with slang. Summer reveals that Ugly Morty is a dictator and says he's done terrible things. See, this is exactly my point. What terrible things? It sucks that he hates his sister, but she is going against him. He's ruled over the city for a long time, and without even trying to explain what terrible things he's done, when give every criminal the death penalty would be a super easy, lazy thing to establish, she just tells Morty not to feel bad because he's not him. But it doesn't have as much impact because we don't know what terrible things he's done. I didn't notice this the first time, but yeah, we are missing out on a little world building in favor of this place just being a generic cyberpunk dictatorship. Which is a shame since it's ruled by Morty. I want to know a lot more. Summer tells Morty with her hand on his shoulder that he's not him, and Rick amusingly breaks the mood by saying, except for the way that, like, he literally is you. And Summer realistically just says that he's not helping. And Rick asks, what makes you think I'm trying to help, Summer? He says that he doesn't care about anything, and it's just here until it's safe to go home. It's at least a helpful defense mechanism for him, because maybe if he let himself care, he'd stress out too much. After all, with all his scientist powers, he could do an infinite amount of helpful things for the universe, but how could he possibly choose which one to do and who to help? There's an infinite amount of problems going on at once. At every single second, there's someone out there suffering, and he can't help everybody. So anything he does is just one small thing being helped in a sea of problems. So maybe that's why he gave up. Because Rick in the show used to freedom fight against the Galactic Federation, so he was basically a hero. He figured nothing I do that's good matters, so nothing evil I do matters. So he decides to do the evil stuff because it's selfish and benefits him. and like the good stuff might not benefit him as much. But he doesn't try to explain himself to her and just looks like a sociopath, which he couldn't have always been. He used to have a wife. I guess it makes sense. He's lived for like 80 years, so he's probably tired of trying to justify and explain himself by now. I could have not wasted time talking about all this, I suppose, but I felt like it was important to explain that he hasn't always been this much of a jerk, and why he is that way, to better explain the appeal of the character. Summer calls him out, saying that this isn't an adventure, and calls him arrogant, probably because he's belittling her depressing situation because he survived adventures before. I see both sides of the story here. It's smart of Rick to call his escapades adventures, because adventure is a light-hearted word that sugarcoats things, portraying his experience as a fictional story that was always guaranteed to have him surviving in the end. Like, he disassociates himself from the danger by fictionalizing it. So it makes his risk-filled life easier to deal with. Morty lampshades that they don't have time for arguing, and asks Summer to tell them what she knows from the beginning. Summer explains to her Morty's a scientific genius. By the time he was in the 5th grade, he developed technologies that could bring military superpowers to their knees with a click of a mouse. Again, it's magic. In 5th grade, so it's not like he just magically became the smart as a 14-year-old. She says that because their world was so futuristic, her Morty became dangerous and seized power and got corrupted by it. Again, how so? Oh well. We're missing a step here. How did he seize power? Mass assassinations? What caused the Morty to be okay with that when it's not like they're all Ricks? Summer says that recently she learned that he was looking to expand his empire to other dimensions. Yeah, because he didn't have enough work on his plate running his own planet. Or the city. I don't know. Summer said he's ruled this city for a long time. It doesn't outright say he's running the world. I guess he is. He developed the tools to look through realities, but never could figure out how to travel between them. Somehow, even though he was as smart as Rick. So maybe he's just barely not as smart. I have a question. Why is he a genius and not all the other Mortys? They'd all have to have the same DNA and therefore the same body and brain power. Although I guess maybe not the same DNA, because like there's a Wasp Rick. He wouldn't have the same DNA. So maybe he could be considered a Morty if he's like the one in that dimension who's coincidentally the most similar to Morty. Whether or not he has the exact same DNA. Like Doofus Rick's Morty doesn't look anything like Morty for the most part, and he's still somehow a Morty. I guess considering that in the pilot episode Morty was revealed to be a bit slow and behind the other kids, and considering that he was referred to as being learning disabled as well, not to mention Rick's getaway driver with Asperger's. Maybe that's just a random genetic mutation, and this particular Morty was lucky enough not to have it, so he naturally inherited Rick's brain power instead. And considering that the show's creators apparently said that Morty will be just as capable as Rick when he's older, he might have the same potential as him and is just a slow learner, as well as being insecure, so he doesn't try. Rick brags to Morty about being smarter than him, and Morty says it's not a competition, and Summer says that because ugly Morty couldn't travel between dimensions himself somehow, he needed Rick to come here, and Summer re-explains Morty's evil plan to us. He figured out how to send those green assassins to other realities, even though he couldn't send himself. I don't understand. Is it that the portals of his are so bad that he needs to make monsters specifically designed to be able to travel through them? I don't picture portals to be made out of anything physical matter-wise. They're just magical holes in reality. And we saw him relying on a scientist to make a seed that could definitely travel between dimensions. And yet, later we're told that Morty made the seed. I guess his first seed attempt was a failure and he needed the scientist, who was apparently smarter than him. Summer says that Rick fell for his trap. He responds with emotional suppression by just saying, bummer. But it's amusing here as opposed to when the hippie Bird and Archie said that, because this is Rick we're talking about. That's what he does. He's intentionally portrayed as not taking things seriously enough. It's self-aware. Jerry wishes he was treated with more respect and flirts with Beth, who's not amused. And he's told that his mission is to retrieve Rick. He says that he likes her appearance with that eye patch. implying that she only had to wear it recently. And we actually see it lampshaded that eye patches are considered attractive, as he says he wonders what's underneath, and she just makes fun of him. That's a memorable moment. Jerry's briefly scared and tells himself he can do this, which is at least relatable then. Morty lampshades that Rick isn't taking anything seriously, and it's amusing that when he's told that they're all in danger, he says, "What, from you? You'll have to excuse me, Morty, but I'm not exactly scared." It may seem like he's being an idiot, but it's more like this is how he deals with danger. He just doesn't take it seriously so he won't stress out. He does have every reason to be arrogant with his gadgetry skills, so it's genre savvy more than anything. Like he was afraid of the Rick killing monster because he knew for a fact he was successfully killing Ricks, so that was a threat to him. He's trying to downplay the seriousness every chance he gets, but the reason it works, unlike in modern Sonic, is because he's called out on it by all of the other characters, who are reacting realistically and feel grounded in their reality, which establishes the actual tone that's intended. Well, he's just there to lighten things up a little. It's obviously an intentional flaw of the character rather than just something that happens and breaks the audience out of the immersion in a serious scene for no other reason than to downplay it by failing to make you laugh. It's acknowledged that only Rick isn't taking it seriously enough rather than the whole seriousness in general being genuinely mocked. And he's supposed to be a nihilist, so of course he doesn't care. That's in his character. Rather than every character being snarky all at once in serious situations, like in Sonic Boom. And here, Rick seems to be actually needed to lighten the mood, because this is a comedy, and we're in an overly dark and serious dystopia all of a sudden. So without Rick providing our only amusement, it'd be boring and grim. Rick at least admits that he thinks the ugly Morty might be a badass, but says it just because there's no Rick around to keep him in check. So for the most part, he's like, "Oh, I'm not scared of ugly Morty." But then he calls him a badass, like he does approve of him. He calls the cyberpunk city a place of stupidity and lack of logic, but it's not a good burn because there's no apparent reason for it. And Morty says that he's just jealous. He says that in a world without him, he becomes the ruler. So maybe it's Rick who's been holding him back all along, even though Rick's the genius and he's not. Yeah, that makes sense. This kind of comes out of nowhere in the context of the story. Rick wasn't around when Morty was in the 5th grade, so he couldn't have held back Morty for that long. He didn't even show up in his life until he was 14. Or at least we know that's the case with the show one. So most Mortys probably spent most of their lives without Rick around anyways. He didn't even have to try to hold them back. This Morty was a genius since the 5th grade, but he's not our Morty. Rick doesn't just say this though and completely destroy Morty's argument, probably because he doesn't care. After all, he's so worked up over this that he might not even believe him. That's how arguments tend to go. The series is pretty good at portraying Rick as someone who's experienced and seen it all. Morty accuses him of running away just like he always does, and stupidly asks who needs him, even though he's a gadgeteer genius. What could Morty do? Then Morty awkwardly says no to calling Jerry dad and talking to him. Jerry makes up a sob story to get Morty to humor him, saying they lost his son and he drove him away. He tells Morty it'll be over before he knows it while holding a gun, and Rick at least tells Summer she's got quite the army. She admits that it's not enough, and this isn't a war they win. Then why bother? That's oddly humble of her. Summer then delusionally insists that Rick came here to help, because he knew that this dimension needed a Rick. When, no, Rick came here to save his own skin. He told her. And she showed no faith in him and respect for him before. So why is she suddenly trying to bring out the good in him now? Then Jerry threatens Morty to try to get Rick to come with them. Jerry tells Summer to not do anything stupid, and she has a great comeback. What, like take my family hostage? Well, technically he's forced to do this by Beth and Ugly Morty. So maybe the stupid thing for him would be not following the order and getting assassins sent after him. But even then, maybe Summer would have protected him anyways. The rebels always get assassins sent after them, technically. So yeah, it was stupid because he probably could have gotten away with not doing it and simply warning them. Rick snarks that he never thought Jerry could get any worse. Jerry accidentally shoots at him and makes him fall over, but he's the main character, so he has to be fine. Rick threatens Jerry, but while he could have easily just immediately shot him after he threatened him, instead he somehow wastes time standing there and listening to Jerry say that he'll kill them all first. So he has the time to activate a bomb, which ends the story by exploding after Rick curses. But of course, since there's another part to the story arc after this, they'll all be fine. It's just a cliffhanger. Although it's one they can do pretty well considering how dark the series is, and it has alternate universes. So the story was about Summer explaining to Rick, basically nothing, actually. We learned that her Morty was a genius since the 5th grade, but that's literally it. I didn't notice this when I first read the story because I was so swept up in how menacing he was. But it's actually pretty disappointingly empty how little details we have. We don't know how he rose to power when that seems pretty important. Even Archie Sonic explained in great length how Eggman rose to power. It also did a lot more to show us why we should see Eggman as a villain. Ugly Morty may look and act terrible, but we don't learn anything about how he's running his country. Terrible things could mean anything, but they don't even go the lazy route and just say he does a ton of executions. Why does he want even more power when he should already be swamped with work as it is? Who knows? He's just a one-dimensional villain. But at least he succeeds at being menacing and having a little presence, but you know it's bad when Eggman had to be as a character. It's uncharacteristic of a Morty to embrace being a dictator instead of being depressed and not really sure that he deserves to be in that position, and talking like this. Looking back on it, it's shocking just how little actually happened in the story, considering how little we actually learned from Summer's exposition. Literally all that happens is that Summer talks to Rick and Morty in a room, and Rick annoys everyone by not taking things seriously. It's just talking. The more interesting part of the story is that Jerry's a double agent who takes Morty hostage to try to retrieve Rick. But then he seems to immediately screw that up by activating a bomb and saying he'll kill them all first. So, how is that retrieving Rick? That's making sure he'll never be retrieved. Why did he have that bomb in the first place? Good thing for Rick he has a force field generator with him, like we saw in the show.